Welcome back to complete our discussion talking about grief in older children and in adults. Joining me again, Barbara Bilderback. You are the bereavement coordinator at St. Francis Hospice.
Yes,
Let's
ma'am.
jump right in. Now, I wanted to ask you before we move from the anger totally, if the caregiver is angry, is it ever okay to tell that to the person that you're caring for or your loved one? Can you say, I am so mad at you. I know you don't want to leave, but I'm just really mad that this is happening. Is that okay, or should the person not do that?
Hard for me to give just one answer because that's so dependent on the relationship between the caregiver and the one who's dying. Their different personality types, their different needs. In some relationships, things like this are just never talked about. And all of a sudden jump in with some strong feeling statement might really scare them both.
Okay.
And there wouldn't be time nor energy to kind of fix that. For some people who do talk openly and appreciate sharing at that level, then yes, that can be dealt with that way.
Okay. Is it just as important, I do want to ask this from the person who is affected, that is terminally ill or is dying, for them to be allowed to talk about how they're feeling about the whole thing?
Yes.
Sometimes that individual may feel that they have to continue to be really strong and not say things because they don't want anybody else to,
They want to
be
protect.
Exactly, to still be protective. But
Yes.
is it good to try to encourage them to talk about how they're feeling?
All you can ever do is just kind of open the door and say by your own words, your willingness to sit down with them, your past history, that you are open to hearing from them how this experience is, what their concerns are, what their new insights are, how they feel they're changing, not always for the worse either, sometimes for the better. But sometimes that's just never going to happen. And we can't make anyone reveal, divulge, go to that place with us if for whatever reason they really cannot.
Okay, but like you said, to open the door and to make it where they can if they want, if the person is wanting to do that, is an okay thing.
Yes, yes.
Okay, now with the person who's grieving, as far as the caregiver, if they get to the sort of the level of acceptance, and like I said, with the grief process, you can go back and forth, right? You can go up and down. You can feel like you're accepting it one day, and then the next day you just lose it, and you're mad all over
That's
again.
how it goes,
Or you
yes.
can't believe it happened. So it's not like we're going in these little steps and we're staying.
No.
Okay, so with that, if you ever get to the point where you're able to accept what's happening with that, is that a good thing to express, sort of like, this is okay with me?
Yes.
And not be viewed as, you see, they're trying to hurry up and help them to die.
No, no. We often do see patients who get to that point, and they're very mellow and relaxed and able to communicate that to those around them, which gives their friends and family, I think, some other peace that they've done all their work here that they know how to do, and they're now just waiting for the next step to happen.
And that caregiver can express that if they're there as well, that this is okay. I'm okay with this now, and I understand, and everything's going to be fine.
You know, they understand that it's part of the circle of life, kind of thing. They can still say, I don't want it to happen. I wish it weren't going to happen for another 10 years, but I understand where we are, and that now things are going to have to change.
Well, how does the caregiver, especially if they have children, whether they're younger or older children, and the children sort of feel like you're just letting go? You know, I mean, should you continue to talk with your children about where you are in terms of, because they may not be there themselves, but how do you work that out so nobody feels like, see, I knew you always wanted him to die, or I know you were trying to hear, you know what I mean?
Well, yes, and when we often see this happen is when there are family members who've been out of town for much of the illness, and in these last days, they haven't appreciated the decline, they haven't appreciated how badly the person now feels, they haven't appreciated all the things that have been tried and are no longer effective. So they tend to come into town and say, oh, let's go to the hospital and let's get more vitamins, and and the person who's been caring for them has already been down that road and knows the journey is at a different point than someone who is kind of coming into the journey on the on a place they've not yet walked. So there's always having to negotiate, explain, be open and understanding and accepting of where everybody else is.
Well, is it good, because in that kind of situation that you're mentioning, which I can see often happens, unfortunately, to have a big meeting,
a family meeting.
Family meeting, or those who maybe been the closest to that person, when they get there, to sit down and kind of talk about where everything is and where you are and what has already happened, so they can be brought up to date with that, and you can clarify, and then you can find out where they are. So it kind of lessens turmoil.
That certainly can be an effective tool. Doesn't always work because people have never done a family meeting.
Right.
So all of a sudden to do one, they're not going to, come to the table knowing what I'm supposed to do or say, or even know if they want to be there. But yes, that is one therapeutic tool that can be used.
Now, how often, and is it recommended that if you had the family get together with the person who is dying, to actually hear them talk about what they want, especially if they're at that point, to say what they want, what they'd like to see, how are they feeling, those kinds of things? Can that help with closure issues on both sides?
Yes.
I mean, if that's a possibility?
Yes. One of the regrets we often hear from survivors after someone died is, well, we never really talked about it. I don't know what she thought. I don't. And often you find out they've never talked about those things in their entire lives, and probably aren't going to now. But for those who have, usually they're quite pleased that has happened. It's answered some questions for them. It's helped them just have other information to work with.
Okay, and my last sort of question on this before I need to wrap up is when the person's in the process of dying, especially if they're getting near the end, is this a good time and an okay time for caregivers or others who may have had some misunderstandings, friction with that individual? Is this a good time to come forward and do the apologies and to try to reconcile that, or is that something that might be too draining? I mean, how should you view that?
It doesn't have to be more than a sentence or two.
Okay.
And we do encourage people, if there's anything you still need to say, it could be, thank you so much for living with me for all these years. Or it could be, I'm really sorry I was such a grouch about X, Y, Z.
All right.
Yes, there's still some final things to be said.
Okay. Thank you so much, Barbara, for sharing and helping us.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Well, that's our show. For Health Alert, I'm Pam Butler. I'd love to hear your comments, questions, or suggestions for future shows. Please write me at Health Alert USA, P.O. Box 50913, Tulsa, Oklahoma 74150. Or if you're on the email trail, please email me at healthalert@gmail.com, healthalertusa@gmail.com, and also visit me on YouTube at youtube.com/healthalertusa. And remember, grieving is individual. Be yourself and just talk about how you're feeling. If not, to those that you love, get some support. Take care. This program would not be possible without the support of OU Physicians in Tulsa.